Hello, and welcome to the Garden of the Black Roses. This is another one of my original works called Last Alliance. Now I'm going to be recording two chapters. Well, a prologue and a chapter, because they're kind of short. This one I wrote... when did I write this? Long time ago? Maybe 2013, 2014? Yeah. I only wrote the prologue and the first chapter. Because originally it was written as a campfire creative on writing.com. But I may write this as one of my original pieces. So, this is Last Alliance. Prologue. At the beginning of the 21st century, heaven began its final assault on hell. Slowly, day by day, Pandemonium became covered by the holy light of God. Demons could barely see their adversaries and were struck down in the overpowering one-sided battle. During this war, the devil thought of an ingenious plan. I will win from the inside out. Spreading his arms wide, he sent his will into Pandemonium. Earthquakes, volcanoes, lava tsunamis ravaged Pandemonium, destroying all outposts of hell in its wake. But something heaven didn't expect began to occur. The forces of heaven began to turn on each other. The holy light began to diminish as rape, murder, and theft became stronger than any other action. Yet, still yet unaffected, angels descended to hell. Quickly they built strongholds from the white marble masonry of heaven. Thus, in effect, they created a barrier against the strange phenomenon. With heaven's holy light no longer in their eyes, hell's forces began to fight back. One by one the strongholds fell to ruin as the white marble barriers crumbled under the intense battles. Archangel Radrius, Lord of the Skies and commander of the Last Alliance stronghold, commanded the forces of light to fall back. Along with the four elemental angels, he strengthened the white marble masonry to admit the holy light. Last Alliance became an impregnable fortress, but also a prison. Those who left the protective barrier of the stronghold quickly succumbed to the phenomenon of hell. Those within the fortress began to call it Devil's Miasma, or more commonly as Devil's Curse. Friends became foes. Distrust and discord quickly began to spread throughout the stronghold. The strong wills that kept the power within the walls began to crumble, creating cracks in the impregnable walls. Demons still could not enter, but they could draw out the more weak and susceptible ones out of the walls to kill, or, for the more elite demons, to play with, like a child with their favorite toy until the subject died. And so our story begins. Chapter 1. Rain's Messenger Paths. A silver-grey cat ran along the fence dividing the living quarters and the central command center. The black war paint-like streaks under her eyes were the only part of her that didn't flash under the holy light every time she moved. Leaping up the steps, she stretched and landed lightly on padded feet on the top step of the command center. She couldn't understand why these professed creatures of the light. If they were truly unashamed of being part of the light, why do they hide their bodies under layers of man-made things called clothes? She swished her tail and pressed her padded hands against the large birch double doors and pushed them open effortlessly. Didn't God create them without clothes? Her ears, with their extended tufts of wispy silver-grey fur, flicked around quickly, listening out for anything out of the ordinary before entering into the building. "You called for me, my lord?" she asked, bowing on one knee before a great white archangel, standing upon a dais with his back to her. His white robes, accentuated with golden scrollwork around the cuffs, right mid-upper arm, waist, and ankles, billowed lightly in the breeze that descended from heaven. "I need you to send a message from me to the 4 elemental angels." The archangel turned and descended the dais, pulling a scroll from deep within the folds of his sleeve. "Get them to read, sign, and return the scroll to me." He turned and walked back up to the dais where he had originally stood. "I'll be waiting here." "At once, my lord Raedris." Rain stood, bowed, and promptly left with the scroll tightly held in one hand. "Why not just summon them the way you summoned me?" she thought as she descended the stairs. "Doing things this way is just so long-winded and a pointless waste of time." Still, she tucked the scroll into the short, bottomless cylinder that was attached to her red leather collar and leapt down the stairs, her body shrinking back to a silver-grey cat once more. "I get to see Lord Subaru again." She bounded along the eastern wall between the white marble walls and the limestone houses that littered the ground within. Already she was planning her first destination. Leaping up, she transformed and perched herself on a windowsill between the 2 potted primulas. "What brings you here?" a sharp voice barked at her from the other room. "I thought I've told you enough times to keep out of my garden." A woman with the palest green apron walked in and placed her pruning shears on the table before coming up close to Rain. "You always get into the catnip that is an ingredient for a healing agent we use on your kind." "I can't help it," Rain replied, pulling the scroll from her cylinder and held it out to her. "If you grew cat grass, then I'd leave it alone, but you refused to." The woman took the scroll and read it quickly. "Why can't he just call us in rather than get us to sign?" Shaking her head, she moved over to the table, picked up a black feather quill, dipped it into the inkwell and signed her name, Tia Rainsworth. Handing the scroll back to Rain, she added, "This is just a waste of time. Why did you even come to me first?" "Because I heard you 2 last night during my rounds," Rain replied, jumping off the windowsill and raising a paw to wave goodbye. "I figured you'd want some time to be alone with Lord Raedris before the others got there." Tia's face quickly deepened to a colour of a tomato. "You feral! I ought to have you put down." She threw a small sandbag at Rain. "Scat!" Rain danced sideways to avoid the sandbag. With a swish of her tail and a laugh, Rain called back, "I haven't told anyone, but you really should think about the noise level, otherwise other people will know." Tia ran to the window in time to see the silver-grey cat disappear around the corner. "Damn cat." Rain giggled to herself and leapt down to run along the low, soot-stained wall. Tia really has a short fuse, but I can't be faulted for warning her. I mean, the amount of noise they were making was enough for anyone to think Lord Raedris was being attacked. Slowing down, she padded carefully into the workshop. "If I'm not careful, Rune will burn me." You here to have your claws sharpened again?" An almost bored voice called out to her. "I run the smithy, not a beauty parlour." "I was teasing," Rain replied, turning back to the humanoid form. Handing him the scroll, she added, "I was hoping you could make me some throwing knives that I can hide in my fur." She waited until he finished reading the scroll before continuing. "It's inconvenient that I always have to come close to my enemy to use my claws. I'll see what I can do for you." He picked up his quill and with a rust-red ink signed Rune Bellsringer. "But in saying that, you will more than likely be only able to use them in the form you are now." He handed the rolled-up scroll back to her. "I don't think I have the ability to have the weapons hide fully when you become a cat. At most, you'll look like you have metallic wings." "I don't mind," Rain replied, twitching her nose at the metallic scent that now wafted from the scroll. "It'll make them think twice before attacking me if I have to send a message outside the stronghold." She waved and shrank back to a cat. Rune picked her up and carried her to the door, petting her the whole way. "Then come by in a week or so. I'll have them done by then." Rain purred happily and leapt out of his arms and down the path until she was out of sight. Turning, Rune smiled. "I better get to work with some preliminary sketches then." "Water!" Rain stared at the little pool of water. "Do I really have to go in there?" She stuck a paw in and made a face. "I hate water!" Her fur stood more on end the deeper she sunk her paw into the pool. "It's water!" "It's all right, Rain." A musical voice called to her from the depths. "I'll come to you." Rain moved away as an angel with a glistening sapphire mermaid tail rose out of the water and perched on the edge, with her tail resting in the pool. "What's so important that you are willing to ignore your fear of water to come see me?" "I'm not afraid," Rain snapped, edging her way slowly towards the angel. "I just hate water." She handed the scroll over. "My fur sticks to me and it gets itchy. I don't like it." She watched as the angel signed Methyl Water's Edge and handed the scroll back. "Will you be alright being out of water for so long?" "I'm an angel first, mermaid second," Methyl replied, sliding back into the water, only until her upper half was showing. "I can summon legs and survive on land as well as any other land creature. I just prefer the water." With a wave, she disappeared into the water. "Thanks." Rain's ears drooped. "I didn't need a bath." She could hear Methyl's giggle from the pool. The angel had decided to flick water at Rain with her tail. "Lord Subaru isn't going to like the fact that I'm wet." Shaking herself, she bounded off towards the last elemental's home. Her fur showered drops on the ground with every step. It was a long distance to Subaru's sky tower, and she hoped that her fur would be dry by then. The heavenly wind was never rough enough to dry anything, and thus clothes and other things would take half a day to dry. Sitting on the cliff overlooking the stronghold, she let the wind gently brush over her fur. "You're wet again." A deep masculine voice called from behind her. "Come inside, I'll dry you." She mewed in surprise as he picked her up in a pale blue towel. "Who wet you?" Subaru set her on a chair and placed a heater behind her. Rain stretched out and returned to her humanoid form. Methyl. I didn't want to go into her pool, so she came out and splashed me on her way back in. She slid the scroll across the table to him. She found it funny. I bet she did, Subaru replied, watching her fur brush towards him and away from the heater. Is your fur longer now? He watched as some of the individual strands break off and float along the table to settle in a line midway along. Sighing, quickly he signed his name, Subaru Windsbreath. He picked up a brush and walked over to her. It looks tangled. I've been running around all day, Rain replied, feeling the brush run smoothly over her fur. She purred low, enjoying the brush strokes. I'll have to go back to Lord Radrius before we have any free time. That's a shame. Subaru pulled her close and slipped the scroll back into its container. I was hoping to be able to cuddle up to you for warmth for a while. Her ears brushed his cheek as they pointed straight up. Come back here when you're done. I'll try, Rain replied with a purr. If I'm not given more work, I'll come back. Shrinking down to a cat, she mewed at him and bounded out the door. Lord Radrius. Rain poked her nose into the grand hall. You here? A giggle caught her ears. I'll come back later. She continued to hear the giggles all the way to her quarters. Radrius sighed and pushed the girl away. Nadriel, stop it! You're my sister! He felt the girl climb back onto his lap. Her warm breath brushed against his face one more. I'm going to be very angry if you don't stop it. But... She tilted her head at him in an annoying way. You're already angry. Also, I'm just trying to save us. Our curse will kill you if we don't see each other often. There is no curse, Radrius sighed, turning his head away from her. Enough! His roar echoed through the great hall. Go and wait for me in your room. Nadriel pouted and left, taking his sword with her. You're going to need it to... You're going to need to come to me to get this whether you like it or not, she cried and ran from the room. Radrius sighed and picked up his thinner rapier and buckled it to his side. How did she get here from Valkyria? Don't they watch their patients there? I'll need to give them a firm talking to when I go back. Looking up, he noticed the silver-grey ear poking slightly in the door. Rain? She stepped in and handed the scroll back to him. Nadriel's here. I know. Rain looked away. I heard her earlier. Her ears flicked and she forced a smile. I went for a walk and came back. I felt like you didn't want me to intrude. You should have intruded. He rested his head on his hand. Her condition is... worse. I think she might need to be sealed away. Wouldn't that be difficult to do? Rain asked, tilting her head. She's a seer speaker, after all. She'll know what you're planning to do and speak words to harm you and anyone else who tries to seal her away. Depends on when she has the vision. Radrius motioned for her to fetch the scroll and inkpot off the table. If she sees it now and doesn't believe it, she won't be able to speak her curse in a day or two from now. He sat up straight and gracefully wrote his order onto the scroll. I want you to go ahead of me to heaven and hand this to the manager of Valkyria. Rain's ears drooped. But I can't enter heaven. She blinked when Radrius pulled her close to him. I can't pass the gates unless I die. She felt him gently stroking her fur, gently tucking something into the slots on the back of her collar. With my feathers, he whispered in her ear. It was a gentle tone that made her shiver with delight. You can pass through. Don't dally or go sightseeing. There are creatures in heaven that would tear those who enter apart if they are still living. Don't meet their eyes or show fear. Go straight to Valkyria and then come back. Understood? Yes, sir, Rain replied, her ears straightening to sharp points. She bounded up the misty pearl-white steps that slowly curved upwards behind his chair. Should I try to speak to Lord Asmodeus as well? Radrius thought about it very carefully before responding. I'll speak to him myself when I return to heaven with Nadriel. Rain saluted and bounded up the stairs and out of sight. She hated the feel of the mist on her skin. It solidified and made her fur feel damp and uncomfortable. Climbing up the last few steps, she stood amongst the snow-white mist of heaven, with the golden gates before her. State your business here, living one, a hooded angel intoned as she wandered closer. His hood moved as if to inspect her up and down before adding, A messenger of Archangel Radrius, yes? Rain nodded, unable to answer. She knew the tremor in her voice would give away her fear to this angel. He pushed open a small side gate and beckoned her inside. You may pass. Once she was inside, he closed the gate once more and locked it with a large ornate lock. Return here once your business is done, provided you are still living. Thank you, Rain replied, focusing her attention to keep her voice steady. Please, where is Valkyria from here? That way. He pointed towards a rather dull-looking building. It's about 200 meters north from that building. Rain nodded again and bounded off quickly, keeping her eyes fixed on the dull building that seemed to suck in the light. A prison, perhaps? She wondered, as she reached it and then turned her direction north towards an even larger dull white building. They don't even treat their mentally ill very well. She bounded along quickly. She could feel the lightness of death with each step she took further into heaven. Mustn't stop. Mustn't dally. Lord Radrius is waiting for me to return. And that's it. I do quite like Last Alliance. It's just... yeah, it's interesting. I did originally have different names for the characters. So the file... one file that I have is different to the story that I wrote, so I'm gonna have to update it when I get a chance. But yeah. But yeah, that's it. Please like, subscribe, comment. If you've got any story ideas, or if you want me to try and write something impromptu with an idea, feel free to comment below. But yeah, as always, let your imagination run wild. Bye for now.